Well, we are in for a treat today as we have the internationally acclaimed power couple, Nikki and Tony Vee, who have literally helped thousands of singles and couples learn the art of living in the ultimate intimate relationship. So they have a wide array of intimate relationship programs, which literally have saved couples all over the world and helped people find or become a couple. So they are, let alone, well, celebrities in their own way. They're also extremely approachable and down to earth. And I'm absolutely delighted we have them with us today. I actually came across them when I was interviewing for the International Association of Professional Coaches and Mentors, where they run amazing masterclasses to coach coaches on coaching relationships. So welcome, Nikki and Tony, and maybe I invite you to present yourselves, what you do and why you do it before we get into the topic of relationships after 50.
Fantastic. Well, firstly, thank you for having us on. And it's always a joy to come and share. And, you know, I love your title, Fabulous After 50, because obviously we are, you know, sadly well into that bracket. But, you know, look, I think it's important to have a fabulous time once you hit the 50 mark. It's not downhill from there. It's uphill if you want it to be. Yeah? So,
well, you're a perfect example of that. You certainly don't look anything like downhill to me.
So, you know, we always introduce each other, which is a bit of fun, but we don't want to take too much time telling about us. But my incredible, amazing and beautiful wife is a sensational soul, in as much that in the years up to 50, she was on the board of a public company, and she was a bit Thatcherite, I have to say. She's a bit Thatcherite.
I'm okay with that.
In as much that she was the only woman on this board, and is infamous for one of the board members once saying to her that she had more balls than all the men put together. So
I can well imagine.
Yeah. So she came from there, but the downside of this success, which obviously many people strive for, men and women, of course.
Yes.
Because we're taught, I guess, if we want to be happy, we need, you know, to have a nice house, a nice car, and money in the bank. Now, of course, we are the product of finding that when we had those things, it didn't actually have the promise at the end of the rainbow. And from Nikki's viewpoint, she had some relationship challenges that led her up into her, around the 47th year for us. So we're nearly in our 50s. And then, of course, she found development, and she really shone in the personal development field, sort of going, oh my God, why didn't they teach us this at school?
Very true.
She then used what she learned and became a coach. So she left a business where she was, you know, this, you know, bigger man than all the men, and became and learned how to use her feminine energy, which ironically, with so many women, you know, unwittingly or even unknowingly not realizing they're using their more masculine energy in the world, to hone her feminine skills and run a department or a division of Bupa by using this different part of her that was undiscovered until she sort of reached the years of her 50s. So she's a fantastic product of that. And then we obviously met and were thrown together, I always say, and then start sharing collectively what we'd learned and achieved.
Right.
Well, follow that, as they say. Yes. What can I say about Tony Vee in only a few minutes? Very much, as Tony said, we had, you know, the first 40 plus years of our lives, you know, very much doing, as Tony said, what we think is going to make us happy. And he had massive success in his business. He has never worked for a company in the whole of his life. Wow. He's a total entrepreneur. In the book that says entrepreneur, definition of entrepreneur, it says Tony Vee. It's a joke. But he started off in his father's business and then bought his father's business, and for 30 plus years built it. And this was a retail operation with tropical fish.
Oh,
when I wrote a vision, I think that some of what we might talk about later is, you know, how did we test this relationship? One of the things that I've always shared with people is when I wrote a vision of what I really wanted my intimate relationship to be like, I wrote fantastic things like zinging and fun and easygoing and all those lovely things that all us girls want. But then I said, I want a man on his purpose. And I want a man who knows where he's going in this world. And I knew I needed somebody strongly masculine, who would look after me and, you know, would be able to deal with me, because I can be a bit feisty, right? So Tony had this, what he calls the Old Testament, and then he found personal development. He has a hysterical story, which we don't have time for today, or we might have, as to how he got into personal development, because I definitely got into personal development through the corporate world, through being, you know, in operations and then HR and stuff like that. Quite boring. Whereas Tony's story is hysterical. And I found personal development. Again, he's the epitome of, you know, why don't they teach us at school? You know, I've done everything I've done. I've got a wonderful, you know, home and money and business and everything. But what this massive gap is missing. And like me, he'd had some challenges in intimate relationships, to the point where we were both probably at this point of like 47, really going, and he definitely was, like, I'd rather be on my own than I would if it's not going to be absolutely amazing. So what happened actually was he decided to write his vision of what he wanted to achieve with the rest of his life at this sort of 40, before I met him. And he invited me. Again, how we met is quite a funny story, and how we got together. But when I met him just socially, he asked me to come and see to a television studio where he was presenting his vision for the future of mankind. No small thing. And at the end, they interviewed all the participants who'd come. There was about 30 of us, and they came up to me and they said, how's the evening been? And I said, well, amazing. And they said, well, tell us what's the big takeaway, you know. And I said, I have never in the whole of my life met a man so on his purpose. And then a little voice in the back of my mind went, well,
that reminds me of something I've said before.
Anyway, long story short, we got together. We were thrown together in parts of the way we actually got together in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Both of us have done quite a lot of working at events for Tony Robbins, which many people would have. And that's how we got together. We were both working for him at the time. So we traveled the world with Tony Robbins. Tony Vee. I call this my Tony. This is Tony Robbins. And we have had a fantastic time. And at one point, Tony Robbins said to Tony, you know, I've got lots of people who are willing to come and work and help at, you know, at our events. I hear, because he kept hearing about our events on intimate relationships. And he said, you know, probably time for you and Nikki to do your own thing. And we took that as a great sign. And so, as I say, the rest is history. And we're coming up for 20 years this December, 20 years married, 20 years together. We got married within a month. Getting together, another story, which was, you know, we got married 3 times in the first 12 weeks, actually, didn't we? Legally after 12 weeks. So we waited a long time.
Why wait, right? When you find the right one, why wait?
And I suppose, you know, as you said in the intro, our absolute joy is to having, you know, we've had businesses, we had our master coach training business for many years. And we've retired that. Obviously, it still, you know, goes online, if you like. But our joy this last few years has been to create a legacy collection, so that we want to have our philosophy and the help that we can give to couples and singles, as you said, to create the ultimate intimate relationship. And Tony is unbelievable at being what's on our best year yet? You are the king of marketing and production.
Yeah.
I just basically, you know, do as I'm told. No, I'm joking.
I don't believe that for a second.
Doesn't sound like me, does it? I actually have found such a joy in supporting him on his purpose, and therefore the joy of working together, helping other couples and single people to find the joy that we've experienced, is our life's purpose. So we are, what did you say? Sensational after 60.
That's going to be the next one.
Tony suggested sexy. So Tony's in his 70th year next year. So we are off on a voyage around the world, but we are absolutely, I mean, he is just
excited about.
You know, I am the luckiest girl in the world.
What a story. And I just love this way that I felt that during the other interview as well, where the two of you just do your thing and it's all in perfect harmony. So of course that brings me to this, the question, so what's the secret? So we're talking about various things. We're talking about, so there's the relationships after 50 where people have been together for years, and how do you hold that together and how do you keep the flame alive? You've got the, how do I find someone, or end of 40s, beginning of 50s, when you think, oh gosh, does that then mean that, I'm not going to find anyone? And then there's, even when we are on a second relationship, I mean, I'm part of a group of women who are on their second relationship, which, was fabulous, and all their liberation and all of that sort of stuff. And the second time round, you're often in a different frame of mind, maybe no children, etc. But still at some point coming to the fact that, how do you keep that passion, what we loved so much, that sort of liberating, everything goes and we discuss everything. How do you keep that alive in the face of, our very busy lives and the fact that you do remain two people, right? However joined you are.
Well, I think, look, one of the basis of finding a continuous love to share between you is to be very truthful. There's that lovely saying that says the truth will set you free. Yes. We also have the saying that love and truth hold hands. And when you're in a relationship that's not working as well as it might, very often, sometimes you're fearful of sharing truth because you're concerned about the consequences of that truth. So the first question we always ask pretty much every couple, and obviously we could ask it here now, but you have to be in a place of truth. And I also say it's good to just use your intuition to answer the question. But it's one of the most valuable questions. It's the question I ask myself. And that is to sort of know your A point. In other words, know where you are right now. What's the truth? So we do that by asking the 0 to 10 question. So if you were to score your relationship on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 is it's absolutely the best it could be, that better than you could even dream of. And 0 is, I often say you're ready to kill each other. And it's definitely not working. It's dysfunctional. What number jumps out at you intuitively? Right. So when people are truthful with themselves and go with that number, we have a sort of a bit of a sliding scale to give you a bit of an idea of where you are. Now, I always say, look, if you're an 8, if you've chosen the number 8, you're doing great. Okay, because anyone that's doing 8 is doing really well. And if you a 9 or a 10, wow, it's a wow. My truth is that sadly, we have done many talks with thousands of people in the audience. And of course, we ask this question, and then unknowing to them, I say, so put your hand up here, who scored 10? And sadly, it is very rare that anybody puts their hand up. Now, so that means there's a gap. There's a gap between your score and 10. So even if you're an 8, you've got a little gap. But my thing, or our thing, definitely will be to, okay, well, let's keep looking at the gap. Because if you look at the gap and are aware of the gap, then you can do something about it. Whereas, we traditionally as humans bury our head in the sand and sort of hope it'll be all okay. But of course, if you score 7 or less, the gap between a 7 and a 10, I always say that 7 is like the top of a slippery slope. And you're like sitting at the top of a slide. And if you've already started to slide down, it will not get better. I mean, it is a sad truth. It will not get better unless you do something about it.
Right.
So
likely to
get worse. So what do you do? What do you do? So that's where I heard you say how questions,
Yes, no, exactly. But I'm thinking various things. I'm thinking, okay, so in a second tour relationship, you haven't built up that amount of past that you cannot say, oh, you know what, and also, let's say you're more mature, you're more confident about owning what you like, what you don't like than before. But isn't there a risk? Because I remember talking about that with a friend a while back, that, imagine a relationship you've been in for 20 plus years. And something really never worked for you. Let's even say something sexual, I quite like being provocative. Isn't there a danger of, after 20 so years of having maybe pretended or whatsoever, isn't there a danger if you say, you know what, actually, I really dislike it when you do this or that, that the person will then be so taken aback and so undermined in their personal confidence that it actually hurts the relationship?
Yes, but this is why what Tony was saying about the truth will set you free and love and truth hold hands. Here's the very, very, very important thing here. The truth is not about what you don't like about your partner. So there's always going to be like, I don't like they do that, and I wish they did that, right? And the truth is about you. And so if we own the truth in our relationship, and this is something that we start with very much from the very beginning with couples. And by the way, if you're single and you are going, well, how do I do my scale of 0 to 10? You can either go, well, where was my last relationship to get a learning from it? Or you can go, what's my feeling of how ready I am? Which brings us to our sort of very core philosophy is that if you see the relationship as not meeting your needs because of your partner, actually, the first thing you need to do is understand what you're doing that means that you're not having your needs met. And of course, that is where the truth is about, I realize that I'm doing this. So basically what happens is if we don't look at ourselves and say, well, how come I'm getting this experience I don't like? So if that was a sexual thing, I'm having this experience that I don't like, what am I doing? So, you know, in that scenario, the truth would be, I realize that I am actually doing things which I don't want to do, or I'm not, you know, I'm not feeling comfortable or whatever. So we have to own it. And the magic that creates is incredible because it takes away all blame. And of course, this is without going into too much detail, this is our fundamental teaching, which basically goes the statistics for divorce in this country. So we're not even going with the whole relationships where they haven't married, but say the divorce statistics in this country are 50% in the UK. Okay. Now, here's the frightening thing, and I think they move around between 45 and 55.
They've dropped a little bit at the moment. Interesting.
And we saw something yesterday that says it's 46% in the United States or something. But here's the more scary statistics. When we looked at this in depth, the statistics for second marriages failing is 75%, and third marriages, this is my third marriage, statistics are failure at 85%. Why? Because people go, as you said, I've been with this person a long time. I've actually got a lot of the women feeling more powerful. I absolutely applaud. I think the downside of it is women are using that power to say, I'm not happy with this, so I'm off. Okay.
Very true, Nikki.
Recognizing how they have been complicit in that. And therefore they go into a second marriage and they just go, okay, next. And they're
taking everything with them, right? They're taking,
regardless of whether they choose the same pattern of behavior, because we've all got patterns of behavior in their partner, or whether they choose the exact opposite. Both of those are very common, by the way. They are bringing themselves in the same way to the party. And then if they go to the third marriage, the same thing. And so again, our fundamental teaching is basically that the statistics don't lie. They are there for us.
Yeah, they're facts, right?
They are facts. They are there for us all to learn from. So this first part, which is sometimes the toughest part, which sometimes people find our coaching, I think I wrote to you and said, you know, people go, you know, we're willing to ask the tough question. We're willing to take people very privately and very confidentially, you know, to places to learn about themselves that they maybe never been before, so that they can truly experience the joy that we talked about earlier. Because otherwise they're going, well, teach me how to make him or her change. Most common thing is, you know, when somebody rings up, they want to tell us about their partner. Nobody's ever rung up and said, I realize I'm the problem, which is why my relationships are failing.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, well, obviously our name is Vee, so we are a bit cheesy sometimes, but it's a bit
very cheesy.
But, you know, if you look at a V, you know, we always say, if there's a gap in your relationship, in other words, you're not a 10, if you're a 10, you'd be at the bottom of the V together. But if you're less than that, you know, the man's going to be on one side of the V and the woman's going to be on the other. And there's this sort of gap that's grown between us. So to bring you closer together, to get you up to the bottom of the V, there are two stages, really. And the very first step is to understand yourself at a high
Know
level.
yourself, right? We come back to
Yeah,
what was
look,
it, Aristotle? Know yourself.
Yes, look, it's all of the avatars basically taught this, and we've heard it, but we've dismissed
We
it.
don't do it. We hear it, but we don't listen really.
Yeah, we don't
right?
live it. And I think, not, making the education system wrong in any way. It's evolved the way it's evolved, but it does leave off of the curriculum 3 very important aspects of life, which, without them, we are left doing the best we can. So I always say to people, look, nobody, when you look at yourself, nobody's wrong. You're not blaming yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. You never learnt this at school. You left school without any knowledge of how to be in an intimate relationship. And yet this is probably the most important area of life.
True.
But it gets shuffled down the list. Every couple we ever see that are disconnected, they put their intimate relationships, if there was a list of values in their life, it's dropped down the bottom. We had one guy once say, where are you on the pecking order in your house? And he said, well, I can tell you easily. He said, basically, at the time, his wife was a minister. She had her own church, And so he said, God is at the top of the list. Then there is the children. Then there is the dog. And then there is me. Yeah. And of course, that couple today are not together. Right. Because they didn't have the relationship as their highest value. Now, if you have your relationship at the highest value, then everything changes. It's like you put effort into that. Whereas actually what we're doing is just hoping that it will be okay. So I think that not having that on the curriculum, they have sex ed. They teach you how to use a condom at school. It's a joke. That is a joke, because honestly, that sets people. Funny enough, we watched a film last night where they showed a little bit of the children were exposed to a little bit of sex education, and it sent the child, the main character of the child, off on a tangent, which was very unhealthy. It's like giving somebody a grain of rice to eat when actually they need a bowl to fill them up. Yeah. So leaving that off is terrible. Then, of course, they do not teach you how to be a parent. And like you say, in the first marriages, normally we have children. Right. Often, second marriages, we don't, but we bring those children with us. Yeah. Often, 2 sets of children into that relationship.
And so 2 sets of parenting and parenting values and all the rest as well.
It's complex. And people, honestly, they do the best they can, but they don't have any information. And I guarantee you, one of the biggest challenges that we meet in relationships is the children, and the fact that they don't know how to parent. They don't have the skills, and they often have a conflict in how they should do that.
Yeah, I see a lot of that as well. Yeah.
This throws the gap,
Yeah.
And the third thing they leave off the curriculum is the subject of money, which again is super, super important. And I can honestly say to you that almost every couple that we coach have got the money thing as a challenge as well. So you add all these are big problems.
Yes.
Which is why we call our program the Couples Intimate Relationship Education Program, which is a big ass title, but it's the education, I say.
Yeah, it's not just about solving or fixing, it's the education, right?
Yeah. And people tend to want tips. We've written for many magazines, we've been on the TV, we've been on the radio, and they always want you to give a tidbit of advice. And
that's just what I was going to ask you.
Honestly, but it's interesting, even if you ask a how question, it's difficult for us to give you a how.
Of course,
So many people who talk about relationships go on a date night and everything. When, relationships are, at a low level, either at a very dysfunctional level where nobody's needs are being met, or whether that we're okay level, we're sort of doing our own thing, got our own hobbies, a little bit like you described, been together a long time, but maybe definitely at the low level and the medium level, the intimacy, the sexual part of the relationship is the thing that is most affected by all the other problems. And really, to get to, if there is a how, to get to a high level of connection and intimacy, therefore then intimacy spells over into a physical thing, is not something that we can give top tips about. Lots of people go, oh, we'll go on a date night. You go on a date night, if you've got all of that going on underneath, nothing's going to change. In fact, likelihood is going to be, we love watching comedians talk about relationships, and often the relationship, they'll say, oh, well, you know, she's booked the date night, she's told him what time to go, and he's sitting there going, well, you know, I'd rather be playing snooker or golf, having a drink with my mates, and all that kind of thing. And silly things like, very quickly, you know, we love going to the cinema, and we always get there early. Tony likes to sit in the back row so he can stretch his legs out because he's got long legs. And we watch.
And snog my wife, good.
Yeah, of course. That's what you...
Sorry. Talk about sexy at 70.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, you know, and we watch couples come in, right? And in 99% of the time, the woman, it has decided, bless her, and look, I am, you know, and such a great example of this is how I used to be, because I got myself, and I do believe that in the last, you know, we talk a lot about what's happened in the last 50, 60 years to the differences between men and women and stuff. Yeah. But just as a quick example, I do believe that you know, Tony talked about me being, you know, on the board of a company, and, you know, the consequences of that on my marriage. And I felt, because I got into that mode of being the leader, being the person in charge, that I would make all the decisions. And therefore, what you watch, if you watch people, especially of our kind of age group, is that she will be rushing ahead, right? And she will be making, and she's tired, by the way, having done this for years and years and years, she's tired. She actually, if most women who tell me the truth, they say to me, I'd love it if he would just do this or this.
Gosh, lots of resonation going on here. Yes.
Yeah. But of course, so many couples, both of them have been complicit in getting to a routine where she pushes forward and he follows behind, sort of a bit like, oh God, being told what to do again, kind of thing. And so here's the thing, is that we watch it happen so sadly in so many scenarios, that's why we have chosen to say we want to do whatever we can. You know, we literally speak on podcasts. We've just been talking this morning about having an agent for speaking engagements and stuff, because we want to have as many people as we can get this message, because there could be so much more joy in relationships. But it sounds simple, but it's not easy, because the patterns are very ingrained. And you know, we go, well, this is what Tony was talking about when he says that the first step is to really understand, as he said, without beating yourself up, why you are, him and her, at the top of this V, so disconnected, so that neither's needs are being met, or that you're having separate lives. And the second thing, of course, to really understand, which is the how, is to understand your patterns and understanding what men and women really want. And so that's our second part of our teaching, is that
I always say that men wear blue glasses and women wear pink glasses. So, you know, if you look at something, so to say you've got
actually cheesily, we have a pair of blue glasses and pink glasses.
Do you?
But if you look at a problem, then a woman looks at that problem through her pink.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, there's no point pretending we don't. We do. No. Well, that's how it is. Yeah.
Men obviously look at it through their blue lenses. But of course, you know, the women are going, look, I don't understand why you can't see that it's pink. Yes. But of course, he's got blue glasses on. So he's going, well, I don't understand why you
and we then think there's something wrong with them, right? I don't understand. You know,
because basically we're going, look, what we see couples effectively doing, which is, you know, a bit of fun, is they're sort of saying to their partner, look, if you could see this the same way as me, then we will get on a lot better. But of course, both parties are
saying the same thing.
So we always say, you know, and I know you've lived abroad, but we lived in Austria for 5 years nearly, and we never learned the language. We were rubbish at it. We had CDs, we had a teacher, you know, and we could never string a sentence together. My funniest thing was to go into a bar once, and I said, I'm going to do it in German. I'm going to have a go. It's very simple, but I'm going to have a go, because I found a little bit of fear of me wanting to find it out, you know. Anyway, I've gone up to the bar and I've said, what did I say? Yeah, I said, zwei Glas. It's very easy, that. Zwei Glas of Rotwein and mit Brot and Kaiser. Now, if you know what German is, you realize that Kaiser is the king, not
The emperor,
king.
exactly.
Yeah. So the guy in
It was the
perfect,
London accent, wasn't
yeah,
it?
the guy said to me in perfect English, because many of the Austrians, especially in the cities, speak perfect English. Said, so you want 2 glasses of red wine and some bread and a king. So it's just a fundamental mistake. But the thing is that I didn't have the education.
Right.
So I go, look, what I needed to do was to learn the language properly. Now,
exactly.
with relationships, of course, the man's task is to understand woman language.
Yes.
If he understands woman language, he doesn't look at it with his roll his eyes and go, I don't understand, and then get a bit frustrated or angry even, and then the gap grows.
Exactly. And it's just acknowledging that there is a different language. It doesn't mean right or wrong. Just like you don't say that a Japanese person is speaking the wrong language. No, they're speaking Japanese, which for them is right. Yeah.
But this journey, so the second step is to learn the language of the other sex.
Right. Now, look, you said no tips, but I've heard loads of them. I'm afraid we're completely running out of time. I can tell I could have you here for episode after episode. And I just love the way you say it. And it's very liberating. And I thank you for that. So, I mean, wherever the audience is who's listening, whether they've been in a marriage for years, whether they're single, whether they're on a second relationship and are scared that it's not working out, I did hear you say lots of tips. And it is about looking at yourself, your patterns and how you are. It's taking responsibility and not just blaming the other person. It's about being honest, with love, but not from a blaming position, but from, okay, this is how I'm seeing things, how are you seeing things, etc. And finding that connection, which makes then the intimacy. And I mean, as you say, it is crucial. We come home every night to our relationship. This is our safe place. This is we rebuild ourselves up. We're ready to go out to the world. We get rid of all our frustrations and pains that we've maybe suffered in other things. It's the most important thing. And that's what makes us happy, not the mega house or the mega job or the whatsoever.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. Now, I don't want to leave without you mentioning your products as well, because I mean, I know you have various education programs, right? On different, I think you even have them diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby. I mean, for people who want to take this one step further, what do they do?
Well, I think there's 2 things, really. You could approach it like I approached the bar, with some trepidation. So I encourage you to, whatever score you gave yourself, if it's not a 10, there's a gap. And the lower it is, the more important it is that you become courageous and move towards the problem. So I always say, look, the thing that I believe got me through was to get excited about the gap.
Yes.
Not to be fearful of the gap, excited that I'm going to learn something new that could radically change my life experience with, not only my partner, but every relationship.
And how you feel about yourself, right? So well said.
It changes all relationships. So there's 2 ways you can get started really with us. One is, go to tonyandnickivee.com. It's sort of the whole thing. Tony, Tony and A-N-D. Nikki is N-I-C-K-I.
Right. And I'll make sure that's all in the show notes as well.
But go there, and then at the top you can hit a button and have a session with us for just £75. It's sort of like a breaking ground where either you on your own, or if your partner is with you on trying to close this gap and have a better experience, the 4 of us have a conversation. It normally lasts, it never lasts less than 45 minutes with us.
Can you imagine?
You're probably 60
No.
90 minutes. But you're going to learn something. We're going to find out and get clarity on where you are and what's in your gap. And then what we do is we come up with a plan based on our 4 programs as to what we could do to assist you. And there's various programs, there's 4 programs, as you said, but there's also various price brackets. So it means that we've done to make it so that everybody can
have access.
Now, and often in those calls, we're actually assisting either someone on their own, maybe at first, and if that's the case, assisting them to help them how to communicate with their partner in a better way, or if we're talking to them as a couple. By the way, everything we do is very private and confidential. There's nobody else knows anything about it. We're very conscious of that with all of our clients. But also people find out that they're learning about each other just literally by having that first call.
Yeah, and then the other thing on the website, on the menu bar, there's a bookstore, or as we call it, a store, yeah? And in there's some free documentation, which is really useful. The two key ones I'd encourage you to just go and grab is, one's called the Top 10 Relationship Mistakes, yeah?
Okay.
In there's this little, you could call it, it's like a test, you know, and then you can read through. It doesn't take long to read, but we encourage you to sit there and do the little test together, and you will suddenly have a realization. If your partner won't do it on your own, and then look at the 10 things and then go, yeah, which ones of these are we doing that's we could learn from? So that's a really cool thing. There's another thing called the Love Zones, which is a really useful little book to read, which sort of says, depending on where you are on the scale of 0 to 10, it tells you a little bit about. So if you're a 1 and a 2, we say you're in the emergency zone. If you're 3 or 4, we say you're in the danger zone. If you're 5, 6 or 7, we're in the okay zone.
And the biggest thing we ask people is, we say, so many people come to us in the danger zone and the emergency zone, and sometimes we come across a couple who go, well, we're only doing okay. We go, hallelujah, this is wonderful. It can really help you. Where sometimes it's challenging, you know, for people when they have already got into disconnection very deeply. But we've basically, you know, there isn't anything that we believe we haven't come across already in the last 20 years. And people think, you know, oh, our problem is unique. It's not going to be. Yeah.
No.
Well, thank you. I mean, thank you for doing this, and thank you. I'm wonderful to hear you have a legacy collection, because I mean, that's something to hold on to. And thank you for sharing all of this with me. I mean, I'm certainly going to go and try your test straight away. And I wish you a wonderful world trip. I mean, you're off again. And I'm looking forward to the Sexy After 70 already. So there we are. Take care. Thank you very, very, very much, Beth. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.